Ladies and gentlemen, too many people treat failure like it's a final sentence, as if it's the end of their story. But failure is not the end. It's the beginning of something greater. Every setback, every mistake, every so-called failure is not a signal to quit. It's a signpost that points you toward growth, strength, and a new path forward. Failure is not your enemy. Failure is your teacher. And the people who achieve greatness in life are not the ones who avoid failure, but the ones who use it as fuel to rise higher. Failure is one of the most misunderstood words in the human vocabulary. Most people hear it and immediately think of shame, defeat, or the end of the road. But the truth is, failure is never proof that you're not good enough. It is proof that you had the courage to step forward and try. The majority of people never even take that first step. They stay on the sidelines, too afraid to risk failing, and because of that, they never taste growth, never discover their true potential, and never experience what it feels like to stretch beyond their limits. The very act of trying, even if it doesn't work out, is already a victory over fear. When you begin to see failure as feedback rather than finality, everything changes. Failure is like a mirror. It reflects back to you the gaps in your approach, the areas you need to improve, and the strategies that don't work. It is not a verdict against your character or your ability. It is simply information. Imagine a scientist running an experiment. If the result doesn't match their expectations, they don't crumble into self-doubt or declare themselves worthless. They take the feedback, adjust the experiment, and run it again until they succeed. Life is no different. Every failed attempt brings with it valuable lessons if you are willing to look closely and ask the right questions. The problem is many people take failure personally. They attach it to their identity and begin to believe the lie that I failed, so I am a failure. This single thought destroys more dreams than failure itself. Failure is not about who you are, it's about what you did, and what you did can always be changed, improved, and refined. When you redefine failure as a teacher rather than a judge, you remove the sting of shame and open yourself to growth. Think about every great innovator, athlete, or leader in history. Their lives are filled with moments of failure, but they never saw those moments as the end. They saw them as stepping stones, as feedback guiding them towards success. Redefining failure means embracing the idea that each setback is not a punishment, but a piece of the process. It means choosing to see failure not as a dead end, but as a detour, one that eventually leads you to where you were meant to go. Every failure we experience carries within it a lesson that can only be discovered if we are willing to face the pain instead of running from it. Most people avoid pain at all costs. They distract themselves, numb themselves, or convince themselves that the failure never happened. But pain is not your enemy. Pain is a messenger. It is there to highlight something you need to learn, something you need to adjust, or something you need to strengthen. If you bury the pain, you also bury the lesson, and that means you are destined to repeat the same mistakes again and again. When you choose to lean into the discomfort of failure and ask, what is this trying to teach me? You shift from victim to student. Suddenly, the failure is no longer a crushing weight. It becomes a classroom. Maybe it's teaching you patience because you wanted results too quickly. Maybe it's teaching you humility because you thought you had all the answers. Maybe it's teaching you persistence because the path you chose requires more effort than you expected. Whatever the lesson, it is always there, hidden in the pain, waiting for you to uncover it. Think about the people who rise to greatness in any field. They don't rise because they avoided failure. They rise because they studied it. They dissected what went wrong. They took responsibility, and they applied the lesson until failure became wisdom. Every time they stumbled, they got sharper, stronger, and more resilient. Over time, those lessons accumulated into a foundation that allowed them to achieve at a level others only dream of. The irony is, the very pain most people run from is the same pain that could transform them into who they need to become. The truth is, pain will visit all of us. There is no escaping it, but you have a choice. You can either let it break you or you can let it build you. If you embrace the lesson inside the pain, you turn failure into a gift. You stop seeing it as something that robs you and start seeing it as something that prepares you. The setbacks that once made you question yourself now become stepping stones that elevate you. Failure, when embraced for the lessons it brings, is never wasted. It becomes the very foundation of future success. One of the greatest traps people fall into when they face failure is confusing their results with their identity. They think because they failed at something, it means they themselves are a failure. That belief is devastating because it chains people to their past mistakes and keeps them from trying again. But the truth is simple. Failure is something you experience, not something you are. Your identity is not defined by one outcome, one attempt, or even a series of attempts that didn't work out. Who you are is far bigger than any result. When a child is learning to walk, they fall again and again. No parent looks at their child and says, you fell 3 times, so you'll never walk. You're a failure. Instead, everyone knows falling is part of learning. Yet as adults, when we stumble in business, in relationships, or in personal goals, we start labeling ourselves as broken or incapable. That's a false narrative. Falling down does not mean you can't get up. It means you are in the process of becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable. Separating your identity from your results allows you to keep moving forward without carrying unnecessary shame. You may fail at a task, but that doesn't mean you are a failure as a person. It only means you haven't found the right way yet. This mindset shift is crucial because when you tie failure to who you are, you attack your own self-worth, and once your self-worth is damaged, discipline, confidence, and persistence become much harder to maintain. On the other hand, when you view failure as external to your identity, you preserve your inner strength and resilience. History is filled with people who experienced countless failures, but never labeled themselves as failures. They understood that failure was a temporary condition, not a permanent identity. Thomas Edison famously reframed thousands of failed attempts at inventing the light bulb as simply discovering thousands of ways that didn't work. His identity was not a man who failed thousands of times, but rather a man determined to succeed. That distinction changed everything. When you remember that failure refines you but never defines you, you give yourself permission to rise again. You stop living under the weight of shame and start living with the freedom to try, to experiment, to adjust, and to grow. You are not the failure, you are the warrior who chooses to stand up after it. Failure can crush you or it can fuel you. The choice is always yours. The moment something doesn't go the way you expected, you're faced with two paths. You can shrink back, replay the disappointment in your head, and let it drain your energy. Or you can take that exact energy and turn it into fuel that drives you forward with more hunger and determination than before. The difference between people who stay stuck and people who break through is not that one never failed. It's that one learned how to use failure as fire. When you fail, you often feel anger, frustration, or disappointment. Most people let those emotions weigh them down, but what if you chose to channel them instead? Think about how powerful it is when you take frustration and convert it into drive. That burning feeling inside of you can either keep you stuck in regret or push you to work harder, smarter, and faster. Athletes do this all the time. Losing a game doesn't make them quit, it makes them train harder. Entrepreneurs who watch a business idea collapse don't stop dreaming. The ones who succeed use the setback to fuel their next big idea. The energy of failure is raw and powerful, and when directed, it becomes unstoppable momentum. To do this, you have to change the meaning of failure in your mind. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, how can I use this? That single question shifts you from powerless to powerful. Suddenly, failure becomes the very thing that strengthens you. Every rejection can fuel your persistence, every mistake can fuel your learning, and every closed door can fuel your determination to find the right one. The pain of failure becomes energy to push beyond your limits. The people who achieve greatness are not the ones who never stumbled. They are the ones who decided that every time they were knocked down, they would rise with more determination than before. They used failure as a reminder of how badly they wanted the prize, how deeply they cared about their mission, and how much they were willing to fight for it. When you make that decision to let failure fuel you instead of drain you, you become unstoppable because nothing can hold back a person who knows how to turn their setbacks into rocket fuel for their future. Failure only truly defeats you if you decide to quit. The people who succeed in life are not always the smartest, the fastest, or the most talented. They are the ones who simply refuse to leave the game. They keep showing up when others walk away, they keep swinging when others put down their gloves, and they keep moving forward when the path seems endless. Success isn't about never failing, it's about staying in the arena long enough to win. The truth is, every attempt that doesn't work is only a stepping stone toward the one that eventually will. Most people give up too soon. They try a few times, encounter resistance, and decide it's not meant for them. What they don't realize is that they were often just one more attempt away from the breakthrough. Imagine a miner digging for gold who quits after hitting rock after rock, not knowing that one more strike would have revealed the treasure. That's what quitting does. It robs you of the reward that persistence would have eventually uncovered. The key to overcoming failure is patience and perseverance. You have to be willing to commit for the long haul. When you face setbacks, instead of asking, should I stop? Start asking, how can I adjust and keep going? Every setback is an invitation to refine your strategy, strengthen your resolve, and build resilience. The longer you stay in the game, the more experience you gain, and that experience is what makes eventual success inevitable. Think about every great achiever in history. They faced countless failures, but they were relentless in their pursuit. Inventors who failed thousands of times eventually created breakthroughs that changed the world. Writers rejected by dozens of publishers eventually produced books that touched millions of lives. Athletes who lost championships came back stronger until they claimed victory. Their secret was not perfection, it was persistence. When you commit to staying in the game long enough, failure transforms from an obstacle into a training ground. Every time you fall and get back up, you sharpen your skills, harden your mindset, and prepare yourself for the moment when success arrives, and it will arrive not because you never failed, but because you refused to quit. In the end, The prize doesn't go to the one who never stumbled, but to the one who stayed in the fight until the end. Every setback you face holds within it the seed of a comeback story. The most inspiring victories in history were not achieved by people who had a smooth, flawless journey. They were achieved by people who turned their darkest moments into fuel for their greatest triumphs. Failure has a way of breaking down your pride, humbling you, and forcing you to grow in ways success never could. And it is in those moments of struggle, when everything seems against you, that the foundation for your comeback is being built. When you experience failure, it can feel like the end of the road, but in reality, it's a turning point. It's a chapter in your story, not the whole book. The choice you have is whether that chapter becomes a tragedy or a setup for your greatest comeback. Think about it. Every movie that inspires us, every hero we admire only becomes powerful because they fell, faced challenges, and found the strength to rise again. Without the setback, there would be no victory worth celebrating. Turning your setback into a comeback begins with perspective. Instead of saying, "This is where it ends," you declare, "This is where I begin again stronger." That mindset shifts everything. Suddenly, the failure is no longer evidence of defeat. It becomes proof that you are still in the fight. The pain you feel becomes your reminder that you care deeply, that your dream matters, and that you are willing to keep going no matter what. Greatness is built in the moments when you choose to rise after falling. A comeback doesn't happen when everything is easy. It happens when you're exhausted, broken, and tempted to quit, yet you still decide to stand up and try again. That resilience creates a story that inspires not only you, but also everyone watching your journey. Your struggle today could become someone else's hope tomorrow. When you learn to see failure as a setup, not a setback, you take back your power. Every closed door becomes preparation for a bigger one opening. Every no positions you for the right guys. Every defeat sharpens the skills you'll need to handle victory when it comes. The truth is, failure isn't there to destroy your story. It's there to make your comeback unforgettable. Every single one of us will face failure. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. But here's the truth. Failure is not your enemy, and it's not the end of your story. It's a signal. It's life's way of saying, you're in the arena, you're daring, you're trying. And if you are brave enough to keep standing, keep pushing, and keep showing up, failure will transform into the very thing that builds your strength, your courage, and your destiny. Every time you fall, remember this, you're not being buried, you're being planted. And when you choose to rise, you come back stronger, deeper, and more unshakable than before. The setbacks you've faced, the rejections you've endured, the disappointments you've carried, they are not your chains, they are your teachers. They are preparing you for the moment you finally break through and inspire everyone around you with your resilience. So don't you dare quit on yourself. Don't give up just because the road is harder than you thought. Every failure is a stepping stone, every fall is a lesson, and every setback is the setup for your greatest comeback. You have more strength inside of you than you realize. You have more resilience, more potential, and more power waiting to be unleashed. The only thing that can stop you is the decision to stop trying. Stand tall, embrace the lessons of your failures, and let them fuel the fire within you. Because your story isn't finished yet. Your best chapters are still unwritten. And when the world looks back on your journey, they won't remember the falls. They'll remember how you got back up again and again until you rose victorious. Thank you for giving me your time, your energy, and your heart today. I honor your courage to keep moving forward, no matter how many times you've been knocked down. Remember this as you walk out of here, failure is never the end. It is only the beginning of something greater. So go out there, rise up, and write the comeback story the world is waiting to see. Thank you, and may your journey be filled with strength, resilience, and unshakable belief in who you are becoming.